This is The Great Outdoors with Jason White, exploring the great outdoors in Pennsylvania and beyond. Brought to you by the Mariana Outdoorsmen Association and by Wild Acres Farm, Fishery, and Regulated Hunting Grounds. Now, The Great Outdoors with Jason White.
Hello, friends. I'm Jason White. Welcome to the Great Outdoors. Special thanks today to our sponsors, the Mariana Outdoorsman Association, Wild Acres Farm, Fishery, and Regulated Hunting Grounds, and last but not least, the Washington County Tourism Promotion Agency. Really thankful for them and supportive of making this show happen. We're going to jump right into it. Got some upcoming events with the Mariana Outdoorsman Association. This Friday, November 3rd, trout stalking number 2 of the fall, winter/spring season. That'll be at 3 p.m. Wild Acres Farm, 1997 Morey Road, Clarksville, Pennsylvania, 15322. Again, that's at 3 p.m. Come check it out. We meet there, and then we kind of move along to the different locations to stalk accordingly. This Saturday, the 4th of November, there's actually a tour and an open house. If anybody's interested, that'll be at 9 a.m. So if you're wanting to be a member, or you're interested, or you just, want to see what we're doing, come on down to Wild Acres Farm, 1997 Morey Road, Clarksville, PA, 15322. That's again at 9 a.m. Really look forward to it, and happy to have you. Saturday, November 18th, it's our annual Veterans and First Responders upland bird hunt. So it's free. I can't stress this enough. It is free. So if you're a veteran or a first responder and you want to come on out, orange vest, orange hat, highly recommend safety glasses, hearing protection. You don't even need a hunting license. So if you want to come on out, just make sure you got the appropriate gear, your shotgun, ammunition, etc. Basically, we take it from there. It's our thanks not only to our veterans, but also our first responders who not only keep our community safe, but also, when something goes awry, whether that's a house fire or a medical emergency, etc., trying to get everybody safe and sound as quickly as possible. That same day, November 18th, it's our annual MOA members picnic. If anybody can bring a covered dish, that is greatly appreciated, but it's kind of our time to get everybody together. We do the outdoors. So, yeah, it's not in the middle of the summer, but this is what we do. The outdoors is what we do, and this time of the year is kind of getting into the peak of what the outdoors is all about, whether you're out getting ready to go deer hunting, bear hunting, waterfowl trapping, so on and so forth. That's where it's at. Looking ahead, Monday, December 11th, trout stalking number 3. Same times, same locations, 3 p.m., Wild Acres Farm. And then we'll head down to the different stream locations and get that all kind of caught up and taken care of. But I'm going to dive into deer hunting today. Deer hunting is here. If you're not out in the woods right now, it's definitely getting to be very, very good. But I wanted to dive in and kind of talk to the listeners today about whitetail hunting with archery, rifle, the rut. So right now we're getting into, I would say right now it's kind of a pre-rut. We're definitely not at a peak rut by any stretch of the imagination. And basically that's when the guys are chasing the does around in mating season. I was actually out in the woods yesterday morning, and I had a small buck messing with a doe a little bit, but nothing aggressive. I saw numerous other bucks and does, and they were kind of doing their normal everyday thing. So the way I would say right now is there's probably some does coming into heat right now. Few and far between, but definitely there's some. The ones that are coming in early. But I'd say we're still about a week or two away from really when the action will get really, really good. And when that action happens, that is absolutely wholeheartedly when you want to get up in a tree stand or in a ground blind, tower stand, etc., and you want to try to camp out as much as you can because, those deer will be cruising. If they're not on a chasing a doe or on the trail of a doe, I've seen it where a buck just cruising the woods at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So when it gets to the point that's peak rut, trust me, you'll know. And you got to look for the signs. Right now, bucks are rubbing on trees, rubbing their antlers, marking territory. They're doing ground scrapes. So I just watched one do this the other day. Basically, they just take 1 foot and they'll just start digging the ground out. And they'll rub their face, usually on some branches, to mark their scent. And then they'll rub the ground. Sometimes they'll pee right on the ground right there, go to the bathroom to mark their territory that they're there. It's a show of, I don't want to say aggression, but it's a show of territory, to kind of show like who's in the area. And when it gets closer to peak rut, trust me, you're going to see, like I was saying the other day, I saw numerous bucks and numerous does. They're all going to be moving. I mean, it's just basically predominantly they're all kind of scattering, pinging through the woods. And you got to be cautious. You got to be cautious in the capacity of just driving because, folks, if you're traveling this time of year, you got to keep your head on a swivel because when the deer start really moving, accidents do happen. And it's a sad thing. Don't want to see anybody in a car wreck. But you got to keep your head on a swivel because when these deer are moving, they're not looking both ways before they cross the road. Sad but true. And so just please, if you're out there traveling, please be safe. The deer definitely are starting to be on the move. There's no doubt about it. And when we get into those peak rut conditions, like I said, they're going to be moving even more. And that's when you're going to start seeing more deer along the roadways. To my point about car accidents, you start seeing more deer laying along the roads, you know that it's that time of year. But if you're out in the woods, there's some really important things to be cognizant of. If you're looking for areas where I would call them like corridors annually for rut activity. And those areas would be places where, again, scrapes, where you find any scrapes, places where you find buck rubs, because they'll come back and freshen them up, whether that's just rubbing their antlers a little bit more, scraping the ground a little bit more, marking their territory a little bit more. They basically make a loop, and as they're kind of cruising around, they're looking for does. That's typically roughly the process of how it goes, and they'll follow these corridors and mark along these corridors. I've had places that I've actually hunted where when it's early season, the deer are heavily headed out into oak tree patches where you got a lot of acorns. They'll be hitting that, and literally, let's just say 80 yards away, when the rut kicks in, they'll shift away from those oak tree groves and they'll move over to where there's these smaller trees where they can rub and mark their territory. It's kind of like, how do I want to say this? It's all about like timing is everything. So when you're deer hunting, knowing and understanding what time of the year it is and knowing and understanding kind of their pattern. Deer that I've seen out of life, in my life hunting, pattern pretty darn regularly the same every year. Pretty close. I don't want to say always exactly the same, but first couple weeks of the season, if we have a good acorn production for that year, they're gonna be eating acorns. So like finding spots first 2 weeks of the season where you got lots of oak trees is definitely a great spot to be. Now you're getting into the rut. Those annual corridors where their rub lines are, scrape lines, etc. That's where you want to target. Once that kind of transitions and goes into rifle season, you want to be looking for places where there's lots of food, so like fields for the evening and mornings, and also you want to be looking for bedding areas, places where these deer are going to get into and hunker down. Your like thicket spots where they can get in and feel safe. So it's really just about what time of the year are you hunting. If you're getting ready to go out right now, you're getting into the rut. So you got to hunt accordingly. They're going to be on the move. They're going to be on these corridors. No, try to find and identify your corridors. And like I said, if you're new to buck hunting and or deer hunting in general, and you're gonna go out and try to make a harvest, you need to be on these corridors, places where you got rub lines, scrape lines, and you know that they're traveling in search of a doe. It's getting really good. I'm expecting, like I said, in the next week to 2 weeks, it's going to get really good, but it's definitely started. The scraping action's happening right now. The rubbing action's happening right now. They're rubbing on limbs with their faces. I just watched it the other day, but it's not full bore. You'll know when it's full bore. You can't miss it. It's unmistakable. That's when you're seeing everything happening. They'll aggressively, even the bucks will even start fighting. I mean, I just watched a couple bucks. They were just hanging out together. I mean, they'll break apart and they'll be on their own. When you're seeing them kind of in groups and they're still hanging out, they're not really. It's not that time yet. Some other things you can look for just to know the time of the year. Look at if you go and physically look at a whitetail buck. Usually, typically in the rut, their necks will swell up. The glands in their necks will actually swell. It almost looks like they're flexing. That is a telltale sign as well. We're getting there. Again, I saw some deer the other day. They're getting there, but they're not there. Like I said, a couple weeks, we're gonna be prime. I'm gonna say right now, it's gonna be 7 to 10 days. You're really gonna see the action. Probably around November 7th to the 10th. Here in Southwest PA, looks like it's gonna be pretty hot. So those last 2 weeks of archery season are just gonna be amazing. So if you get the chance, by all means, get out in the woods and pack a bag. Try to do your best to stay all day or half the day. But when it gets to that point where they're cruising, like I said, I've seen situations where I've seen people get out of the woods at 10:30 in the morning, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, buck comes cruising through. It happens. It absolutely happens. So, I understand everybody's schedules don't accommodate always to be able to hunt all day, but if you do have the ability during the rut to hunt all day, highly recommend it. I can't stress this enough. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. So with the rut, it seems like to me the past couple years, even into rifle season, I've noticed it seems to be trending a little later. I've actually seen bucks harvested the first week of rifle season that were trailing on does. So it's something you should be conscientious of. I don't necessarily think it needs to be the number one thought process that you should have. By the time we get to rifle season being right around that first week of December, the deer are looking for food. So, by then, the leaves are all down. Most of the acorns are down, or the squirrels have taken them and hidden them all away. The deer are looking for green, whether that's grass, whether that's different plants that still provide some nourishment. They'll eat leaves off of the wooded floor, but they're looking to get to green fields or any place that they can get nourishment. Places where there isn't as much, heck, they'll devour the whole forest floor. You're talking the tips of sticks. When I say sticks, I mean like the limbs off of trees. Like they'll literally bite the ends of a tree off. They do this even more so after January into like February, March, when the new buds are starting to come out. The tail end of, I will say, winter. But once we get through the rut here and you're starting to look about rifle hunting, thicket places where they're going to be laying down, and food. If you can remember those two things. And another one that's really important is always a water source. They're always going to need water. Everything needs water. So, knowing where, if you're nearby a stream or even through some places in the woods where you got ditch lines where there's water movement really going really well. That's important. So just be conscientious of these different things out in the forest, in the woods, wherever you're at your farm. Heck, some of you archery hunting are literally on the backside of housing developments, which is awesome. I'm glad to see, despite where you're hunting, I'm glad to see that you're out enjoying the great outdoors, because there's some big bucks hanging around some of these housing developments. So don't think that just because you're close to the city or in suburban areas that you can't harvest a big buck. You can, absolutely. You just need to know what you're looking for. Do your due diligence in advance. I mean, we spent all summer doing mineral sites, putting in food plots. The food plots necessarily weren't wholeheartedly for just growing antlers, but it's also to hold the deer and to attract the deer in the during the hunting seasons, whenever the deer obviously need nourishment. But during the summer, I mean, that's when the deer's antlers are growing. So that's when heavy doses of minerals are extremely important. And clearly there's food everywhere. I mean, the woods, the forests, etc., are lush with green at that time. So the animals are getting plenty of protein. But the biggest thing is when you're talking about antler growth, minerals are extremely important, which for another show, going into the details of minerals and antler growth. But by this time of the year, antlers are finished. They're hard. Bucks are looking big. It's all about the food and knowing what food source they're going towards right now. And as we kind of progress forward here, archery is going to be winding down sooner than later. It's crazy to say that. It feels like it just started, but we're about at the midway point now, going on the downslope of it. And then we're going to be transitioning into bear season, which, speaking of bear, I actually, on my way to the radio station about a month ago, had a huge bear, biggest bear I've ever seen in my life, near Brownsville, Pennsylvania, crossing Route 43, which I was pretty impressed. Scared the crap out of me, because I'm literally driving down the road and I just saw this big black blob coming across. I was like, holy moly, if I'd have hit that thing, it would have probably messed my truck up bad. But luckily I was able to avoid it. But it was certainly a sight to see. But I know that coming up, people are going to be hitting the woods the week of Thanksgiving, the weekend before. Bear season will be coming in, and I really wish everybody nothing but the best. I know there's a lot of avid bear hunters in Pennsylvania. And also, I'm really hoping that they can put a dent into the population and keep our numbers in check in Pennsylvania, because I know that through my efforts with the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, there's certainly certain parts of the state where the bears have grown beyond, I would say, a population control, where they've become a pretty big nuisance. And that's become pretty evident from some of the conversations we've had. And it's concerning because, you start getting property damages. They start getting into feed bins, people with farms, etc., getting into and destroying different crops. It's a problem. It's the same thing with the deer. Getting good deer harvest numbers is really important, because I can't tell you how many people that I've spoken to that are farmers that, the first, I want to say the comment was, is typically like the first 30 feet or 30 yards of a food plot coming out of the woods usually gets destroyed by the deer. So like if you're planting corn, soybeans, etc., it basically gets devoured by the deer. So that's a sombering thing to realize when agriculture is so important to all of us to survive. But to hear that we have such a problem when it comes to crop damages by different species, whether that's deer, bear, and I can go on and on and on. But it's definitely important that it's not only important for our social lives to go out and enjoy the outdoors, but it's also very important for agriculture, for our economy, to keep wildlife in balance and for us to implement conservation measures to keep everything in check. Because if we don't do that, that's when the scales tip. That's when you start seeing crops totally destroyed by wildlife, properties getting damaged, etc. And next thing you know, things kind of can spiral out of control in a very negative way. So I really hope everybody goes out, enjoys archery season. I hope you get out there and enjoy bear season. And then before you know it, it's going to be Thanksgiving. And that following Saturday, it's going to be opening rifle season in Pennsylvania. And that's usually an interesting time because, you know, for those lucky enough to have private property, you know, hopefully you can get to enjoy a little bit of solitude and to be in your space and enjoy your time with family, friends, etc. But you know, every year I see some sights, whether that's people doing things they shouldn't be doing, whether that's people road hunting, which I think is a travesty and a shame that happens, but also people on some of these public access areas or game lands where it's just like it almost I would say the public access areas, in my view, that are what I've seen are the worst because it's almost like a circus. I've seen farms where it looks like there's 30 people hunting at the same time. Just it looks like an orange army. We always call it the orange army, just like pumpkins going around. And it's a shame because I can't tell you how many deer that I've found personally off of these public access areas in the past 5 years where people have shot deer and not went and recovered them. Let a bullet fly, hit the deer, probably in the butt, something, etc. And, you know, obviously the bullet goes up through the body cavity, ends up killing a deer, but the deer makes its way down into a stream bottom, creek bottom, etc., and dies. And these people don't go and recover their deer. So a lesson with that is please, 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 if nothing more than simply having some compassion for the animal, if you're going to pull the trigger, you need to go after and recover the animal. So that goes, I don't care if you're young, old, anything in between. If you're going to go out hunting, there is no point in going hunting if you're not going to go and recover the animal. Otherwise, you're just basically a savage, and you shouldn't be hunting in the great outdoors of Pennsylvania in the first place. I mean, I've shot deer before where I've literally given somebody money that had a trailing dog. Actually, here in Fayette County, there's a couple people that I know that have blood dogs, and they'll trail a deer and recover them. And I've gotten to do that, and it's very successful. Something to think about when it comes to trailing deer and you're going to go recover a deer. I don't care if this is archery or rifle. Unless you either shoot your arrow or shoot your rifle and you watch that animal fall, like right then and there, give it time. Give it some time. Because what happens far too often, somebody gets excited, they let an arrow fly, they shoot their gun, etc., and literally, it's like, boom, I got to get out of my tree stand. I'm going to go and recover the animal. The thing about it is if you didn't put a good shot on, let's say you put a bad shot, sometimes you got to let it, I hate to be graphic, but you got to let it bleed out. You got to give it the time to pass. And what happens is if you didn't, and you go and get out of that tree stand, and you don't give it, say, at least an hour, what can happen is that deer could be laying a couple 100 yards from you. You go, next thing you know, it jumps up again. Boom. Moves again. This process will continue and continue and continue. The best thing I can tell you to do is give it at least, when you shoot a deer, if you do not see it physically go down and you're unsure, give it an hour. It's not going to hurt anything. Give it an hour and then follow your trail. And hopefully you'll recover it. If you do that and you bump a deer that was bedded down and it moves again, if this happens more than twice, if it happens at least twice, you need to just back out and leave. I can tell you that from experience. So like I said, my standard operating procedures is if I see it fall down, I'll go get it. Awesome. You know, obviously it's in sight. If it takes off, give it an hour, let it go. Go try to retrieve it. You bump it. If you run into the animal and you bump it, 2 times is too many. You know, if you bump it once, it gets up and takes off, let it go, back out. Just remember that. 1 and out. Two is too many. Because if you're bumping deer, you're not going to recover it. You're basically going to be in a, I don't want to say a bad situation, but you're probably going to be in a bad situation, or you're probably going to be disappointed, because it's just going to keep going and going and going. It's not going to die the way that you think it will. Will it die? Well, you hope that you'll fill your tag and have your harvest completed, but you're in a much better position if you bump a deer and it runs, because they're not going to run super far. I mean, they're going to run maybe a few hundred yards and then they'll lay back down because they're obviously wounded. The premise is if you back out, even if let's say this happens in the evening and you shoot a deer and you waited your hour, you go and you bump the deer. Back out, leave, come back in the morning and try again. Because then you gave it all night. Hopefully if it's cold, the meat wouldn't be spoiled. Hopefully. But you know, I had this happen before where I did this exact same thing, backed out, and the coyotes were into the deer before in the morning. Super disappointed about it because obviously I lost all that meat, but I was still able to recover the animal. But I'm glad that I backed out, because if I'd have kept pushing it, I don't know that I would have recovered it, or I would have maybe went a lot farther of a distance to achieve my goal at the end of the day. So it's really important, like even with that, like with even the patience of harvesting the animal. If you do not see it go down immediately, just be respectful, back out a little bit, give it some time. If you come back in an hour later, like I said, and you bump it, back out, let it go for the night, or come back hours later. So at least you give it some time to hopefully to pass on. You keep bumping deer, you're never going to get it. Like, it's just going to be gone. And probably, for example, if this happens in archery, you're probably going to end up seeing that deer in rifle season with gangrene, wounded. I had a friend, this exact thing happened. This was 2 years ago. Had a guy, I was guiding a hunt, and this guy shoots a buck. And I said, where did you shoot the buck at? He's like, he calls me. He says, I got a big buck. And I was like, okay, just do not move out of the stand. Well, I'm already down. I was like, well, you're not supposed to get down. You're supposed to wait till I get there. Anyways, the guy got down, and basically, I don't know if he thought he was running a race or what he was doing, but basically he got down and he started like flagging to get to this deer. And I said, well, where did you shoot it at? He's like, I shot it behind the shoulder. Well, here we end up, I get there, and we trailed this deer for, it was like 1.5 miles is how far we went. And I know we bumped it twice. And I just kept going because that's what the guy wanted. I was like, all right, if that's what you want. So we backed out. I went and had my buddy come with the blood dog. When it was all said and done, we made it 1.5 miles one way, and then we saw that buck was bedded down, and he got up and ran again at the 1.5, and I was like, we're done. Like, there's no way that buck's not going to die. Sure enough, we had bumped that thing for 1.5 miles. That buck made a giant circle within 3 weeks. Made it all the way back where he got shot at, went about another 300 yards past onto a friend of mine's property. Broad daylight, second week of rifle season, and he got harvested. The guy shot the buck literally right in the shoulder blade. So the arrow didn't even, basically the arrowhead got lodged in a bone. The deer got gangrene. He was basically skin and bones. He barely was surviving. When he shot the buck in right with the rifle, the buck fell down. It was so sick that the antlers actually fell right off of the buck, which is crazy to think of. It's a crazy story, but I saw it. So he called me and showed me the pictures and told me the story, and I was like, wow, like unreal. But just make sure, it goes back to another point. If you're going to make a shot, make sure you're shot, especially in archery. Don't be shooting a deer in a shoulder blade. You're not shooting a gun. It's not going to go through the shoulder blade. Like, it's not going to happen. You shoot a buck in, in the shoulder blade with a high-powered rifle, it's a totally different story. An arrow in a high-powered rifle is like apples and oranges. They're not even remotely the same. So it's something you just got to be very conscientious of and understanding of. You shoot behind the shoulder with an arrow. You should shoot the same place with a rifle, but can you shoot in the shoulder with a rifle? Yes, you can. I still don't recommend it. You can do it. But the point is this guy shot this buck, shot it in the shoulder. He clearly did two things wrong. Number one, he didn't range properly, so he had his yardage off, so the arrow was actually much lower than should have been. That was number one. And number two, he clearly either pulled or he hit a limb or something as to where he hit in the shoulder. He swore up and down that he ranged it, and he swore up and down that he thought he put a good shot, but it was definitely not a good shot. But listen, every time something like this happens, it's a lesson. It's a life's lesson. And I've taken even the mistakes of others, and you learn from them. So, when you go out in the woods in archery season right now, have a rangefinder with you. Even if you go out in advance and range things and put up tape markers around your stand, like at your shooting lanes or places you think you're going to shoot, so you know. But if you can have a rangefinder, have it. Same thing goes for rifle season. Take a rangefinder with you, because if you're shooting more than, let's say, 200 yards, you need to have a rangefinder, or you need to at least be able to identify how to figure out the range, because whether you want it to or not, a bullet's going to drop past 200 yards. It's going to happen. Like, it's going to happen. So you need to know what's the drop of your bullet, the same as you would want to know the drop of your arrow. These are things that you need to know, and the only way that you're going to know that is with, number one, practice, knowing how much your arrow drops, where to aim, etc. at different yardages. Number two, having rangefinders so you can, when you're out there, whether with your bow or your rifle, knowing the drop and knowing what the actual yardage is. And number three, if you don't know, you shouldn't either let that arrow fly or you should not let that bullet fly. Don't pull the trigger, because it's not right. It's wrong. You should not do that. It's not something that, how do I want to say this? It's unsportsmanlike, because if you go and wound a deer, what did you achieve? Your tag's not filled, your freezer isn't filled, and the only thing you achieved at the end of the day was wounding an animal that's probably going to die of either gangrene or just literally just die of starvation, or it's wound in the woods and you probably aren't going to recover it anyways. The coyotes are going to eat it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you need to be respectful of the animal as much as of the sport, and you want to be able to fill your tag. So practice understanding situations, understanding yardages, knowing the drop of your arrow, knowing the drop of your bullet, knowing distances when you're out in different situations. It all adds up to success, because if you do all these little things and you practice and you're situationally aware of what you should or shouldn't do. Hey, listen, there's been times where I've passed up on shots because I didn't feel comfortable that I was going to hit a limb or that I was in a good situation to be successful. That happens. It's part of hunting. This is hunting. It's not shooting. You're not going out and there's a 200-inch buck just standing in a field and you just shoot it. That's not how it happens. Don't get me wrong. There's people out there that are lucky, that get real lucky, that pull their gun out maybe shoot 1 or 2 rounds through, and shoot a once-in-a-lifetime buck at 50 yards. It happens. It happens, and you know what? That's awesome that people are that lucky. Most people are never going to be that lucky. So you have to tip the scales in your favor when it comes to whitetail hunting, bear hunting, elk hunting, any big game, turkey. You need to do your practice in the capacity of having your firearm, bow sighted in, know your situations, tree stand placement locations based upon the time of the year, whether that's, like I said, near acorns certain times of the year, whether that's along travel corridors for the rut, bedding areas, or even food plots, food locations. These are all things for you to know and understand, and they're applicable to all different species. You know, even with turkeys, the way that turkeys are right now is not the same that they act. They act completely different come springtime. When they're springtime, it's go out into a field, strut, gobble at daylight, hens clucking, looking to mate. Like, it's just a totally different dynamic. And with deer, you get the different dynamics change so much in such a short span because of food conditions in the woods, food conditions in fields, weather conditions change so much right now. I mean, look, it was snowing today. It's November 1st. Wake up and I had some snow on my vehicle. Deer are wanting to run around and be on the move when it's in colder conditions as opposed to warmer. So, even the weather conditions right now are extremely positive in regards to the rut and when they're going to move. You get hot days. It's something to think about. Like, do you want to be out doing sprints, whatnot in the heat, or would you prefer it to be a little cooler? Well, a little cooler is always, makes it easier. So, if you have a hot day, it's more likely the deer are going to be moving early in the morning or literally right before the sun goes down. These are just things for you to take in and consume and to understand. Some other little couple side notes that I think are really important here for archery. Scent. Make sure your clothes are clean. You don't want any perfumes on. Don't be putting in, like Old Spice or Ivory soap. You need to be using like a scent-free soap. Your clothes should be washed in a scent-free soap. I highly recommend. I keep my clothes out on a covered porch, so they're constantly out in the air, basically to breathe and to have no scent attached to them. I think that's very important. You want it to be like when you step in the woods that you're part of the ambient woods, forest landscape. You don't want to smell different because, trust me, a deer has a fantastic nose and they have fantastic hearing. Those are their two advantages. Their eyes are also very good as well during the daytime. When it's twilight or even dark, not so good. But their nose and their ears, fantastic. So it's very, very important that scent is a very strong proponent of what you do, and you want to smell. You want to have no smell. You want to smell like the woods, whether that's, I use different types of sportsman's shampoos. I even wash my clothes in that type of a soap as well. But like I said, you don't want to, even if you wash your clothes, don't wash them and hang them up in your house because like if you clean and you're using Lysol or you're using different cleaning products, Pine Sol, etc., that totally defeats the purpose because now that aroma will get into your clothing. You want to take your clothes and either put them outside on a porch hanging up, or they even do those, I know you can buy those like ozone bags that are scent free. So like that's an option if you're going to keep it in the house. But just remember, like, you go in the woods, you're not smelling like potpourri or you're not smelling Lysol when you're out in the woods. And if you have any of these smells or even perfumes on, trust me, the deer are going to know you're there, and it's definitely going to hurt your chances. I would recommend as a cover scent, but also as an attractant. There are different types of estrus that you can buy, doe estrus now. This is a good time of the year to use that. You can buy like scent bombs, etc., that are estrus in base. I don't really have one that I highly recommend. I think you probably should trial and error yourself. But I do think, at a very minimum, they help with cover scent because, even when you do the best job possible to have no scent, these are wild animals with a big nose and, like I said, huge ears, and that is their defense mechanism because immediately they try to put as much distance between you as them as they can. So it's very important to try to give yourself the upper hand. So just to reiterate, no smell. You want to get any scents off of you. You want to be as scent free as possible. But these estruses are really beneficial right now because you're getting into the rut. And basically, what it is, it's urine from a female that's in heat, and basically it has a very strong aroma to it. And basically, whether there's sprays, there's drips, there's wafers, but this stuff gets in here, and basically that is what then the deer kind of smell, and it's extremely beneficial. But I'll be talking more about that as we kind of progress through the upcoming weeks because we got a lot of archery hunting ahead of us, bear hunting. Heck, I didn't even really get into waterfowl, but we got a lot of like awesome things right around the corner, and I'm really excited because I love this time of year. The water's getting cold, the trout are just fantastic, and it's such an exciting time to be in the outdoors. That being said, I just want to recap about the upcoming MOA events. This Friday, trout stalking number 2, that's at 3 p.m. Wild Acres Farm, 1997 Morey Road, Clarksville, PA 15322. If you want to join the MOA, you can join at MarianaOutdoors.com. You can do it right on the website. You get the rest of this year for free, and then you get all of next year. As part of that, gun ranges, 5-stand, 750-yard rifle range, fishing, upland bird hunting, can't beat it. If you don't want to be a member, you can just come to Wild Acres Farm, do an upland bird hunt, deer hunt, turkey hunt. Happy to have you. But until next week, folks, a special thanks again to Washington County Chamber and Tourism. I'm Jason White. This is The Great Outdoors. God bless. Enjoy the great outdoors, and I'll see you next week.